Peru just sealed a 20-year protection plan for Machu Picchu. 3 weeks later, they approved a $1 billion airport runway directly over functioning Inca terraces. That is not a contradiction. That is a confession. Because in the months leading up to that decision, 3 independent scientific teams cracked open discoveries beneath this mountain that nobody was prepared for. A Yale geneticist pulled DNA from 34 skeletons inside the citadel walls. 6 belonged to women from the Amazon rainforest, buried at 8,000 feet in a site the textbooks still call a royal vacation home. A drone-mounted LiDAR team burned through jungle canopy over government-restricted slopes and found 12 buildings that have never appeared on any map in 500 years. And a Brazilian geologist proved the Inca placed this entire citadel on the intersection of 2 massive fault lines that cancel each other out. The single most earthquake-proof point in the region, a point we needed satellites to find. They found it in the 15th century with nothing, and then Peru approved the bulldozers. The study proving the valley can handle the traffic? Still 7 months away. So ask yourself, is Peru protecting this site or burying it twice? Every year, 1.5 million tourists raise a phone at that same viewpoint. Click. Green terraces, stone walls, maybe a llama. They go home thinking they saw Machu Picchu. They saw 40% of it. 60% of the actual structure sits underground. 9 feet beneath those photogenic terraces, excavation teams uncovered an entire subterranean network. Stone-lined drainage conduits, graded gravel filtration beds, retaining walls, water channels carved so precisely that modern civil engineers have described them as rivaling anything built in the last century. Some say surpassing it. Rain hits the summit. The system catches every drop, routes it through stone arteries across dozens of terrace levels, filters it through layered gravel, and expels it at the mountain's base in controlled streams. 0 pooling, 0 erosion, 0 structural failure. For 500 years, through monsoons, through earthquakes, through the total collapse of the civilization that designed it. No iron tools built this. No wheels moved these stones. No mortar holds them together. Just joints so tight you cannot fit a razor blade between them. And right now, while you're watching this, that Inca plumbing is managing rainfall on a Peruvian mountainside more efficiently than the storm drains in most capital cities on Earth. 5 centuries of abandonment, still running. So here's the question that should be keeping people up at night. If 40% of this site stunned the world, what is hiding in the other 60? We just got our first answer, and it's worse than anyone expected. In 2025, geologist Dr. Rualdo Menegat at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul ran tectonic simulations on the bedrock beneath Machu Picchu. Over 1,000 earthquake scenarios, every magnitude, every direction. He ran the models 3 times. The first 2 looked like software errors. 2 fault lines, each stretching roughly 175 kilometers, crossed directly beneath the citadel. Not nearby, directly under it. They form a geological X. The main temple complex sits almost exactly on the intersection point. Fault lines mean one thing to most people: destruction. The ground cracks. Walls fall. Cities die. Cusco, 50 miles away, has been flattened multiple times. Colonial churches turned to gravel, thousands buried in rubble. Machu Picchu? 500 years. Not a single significant crack. Menegat's simulations revealed why. At that exact intersection, the opposing tectonic forces neutralize each other. The 2 faults push in opposition, creating a geological sweet spot where the ground barely moves, even during severe seismic events. Think about what that means. The Inca selected the one point out of thousands of possible mountain locations where 2 invisible forces collide and cancel. We identified that point using orbiting satellites and supercomputer modeling. They identified it in the 15th century, without written language, without instruments, without any technology we can account for. How? Peru's government was asked about Menegot's findings. Their response? Nothing. Dead silence. Remember that pattern. It's about to repeat. Before the LiDAR, before the fault lines, bioarchaeologist Dr. Lucy Salazar and geneticist Dr. Richard Berger at Yale were sequencing DNA from 34 individuals entombed within Machu Picchu. These were not scattered remains, deliberate burials, carefully positioned across the citadel over multiple generations. The study was supposed to rubber stamp the old story. Emperor's retreat, royal playground, case closed. The DNA said otherwise. The genetic diversity was staggering. Coastal populations from hundreds of miles west, northern ethnic groups with entirely different linguistic roots, people who shared no geography, no language, no obvious reason to exist in the same place. Then, Salazar found the 6 women. 6 female remains carrying genetic markers from the lowland Amazon, jungle people, buried at altitude in freezing, thin air, inside a site supposedly reserved for Inca royalty. Now picture what getting there meant. You begin in sweltering jungle at near sea level, humidity so thick it coats your throat. Then you climb. Vertical passes where the trail squeezes to shoulder width. Temperatures collapse 40 degrees in a day. Mud turns to ice, turns to sheer, exposed rock. The altitude crushes your lungs one breath at a time. Modern hikers with GPS and Gore-Tex still die on these routes. 500 years ago, those 6 women crossed that gauntlet, or were marched through it. One pair stopped Salazar's pen mid-sentence, a mother and daughter buried near each other. But the isotope chemistry locked in their bones told 2 completely different stories. Different diets, different water, different geographies. Bound by blood, separated by entire worlds. Reunited only in death, on a frozen peak nobody was supposed to interrogate. This was not wandering, not migration. This was state-level orchestration. Someone with imperial authority moved these women across a continent like assets on a ledger. Why them? Why this place? What role did they serve inside this machine? Salazar published. Berger published. Cambridge published warnings. Japanese archaeological teams flagged the implications. Peru's official response to every single paper? Silence. The same silence they gave Menegot. The same silence they would give to what the LiDAR found hiding in the restricted zones. But here's where the silence stops being curious and starts looking strategic. January 2026. Peru's Ministry of Culture signs a sweeping 20-year master plan for Machu Picchu's conservation. Preservation mandates, visitor management overhauls, protection benchmarks extending to 2046. February 2026. 3 weeks later, Peru fast-tracks the Chinchero International Airport, a commercial runway, poured directly over 600-year-old Inca agricultural terraces in the Sacred Valley. Terraces where the irrigation still flows and the drainage still performs.
So throughout the city, there's this whole canalization of channels which diffuse the water to outfall areas.
The same engineering bloodline that built the underground labyrinth beneath Machu Picchu. Functioning, alive, about to become tarmac. Projected load, 8 million tourists per year. 200% above current levels. Target? Planes on the ground by late 2027, 18 months from signature to operational. Here is the detail that should stop you cold. The official capacity study, the government's own report determining whether the Sacred Valley can physically survive 8 million annual visitors, is not due until September 2026, 7 months after the airport was greenlit. They approved the project before the data that justifies the project even exists. This airport had been dead for 15 years, killed by the Odebrecht bribery scandal. Billions laundered across 12 countries, presidents imprisoned, contracts incinerated. Not a single shovel hit dirt for a decade and a half. Then, in rapid succession,
LiDAR finds 12 unknown structures in restricted zones tourists and researchers cannot enter. DNA demolishes the royal retreat narrative. Tectonic modeling proves the Inca possessed knowledge we only replicated last year. And suddenly, urgently, frantically, a dead airport project gets an 18-month resurrection timeline. Every independent scientist studying this site has published the same warning. Mass tourism at this scale will inflict direct, measurable, irreversible damage to underground infrastructure that has survived 5 centuries without a scratch. Peru has not rebutted a single data point, not one.
Here is where this lands. 12 structures found in zones the government sealed decades ago and never explained why. A multi-ethnic workforce, genetically proven to have been assembled from across a continent. A citadel placed on an invisible tectonic intersection that took 21st century technology to detect. 60% of the site still locked underground, unstudied, unmapped, and the one government controlling access to all of it has met every breakthrough with silence. Then approved a runway before its own feasibility study was finished. There is one more thing. Those 12 LiDAR structures Caramanica found, they sat just outside the known boundary of the citadel. Just outside. Nobody has scanned the deeper valleys. Nobody has been allowed to. If 12 buildings were hiding in the margins, what is sitting 2 miles out? 5 miles? What if Machu Picchu is not a citadel at all, but the visible core of something we haven't even begun to measure? That is the question Peru does not want funded, staffed, or answered before the concrete dries. Drop "cover up" in the comments if you believe Peru is paving over this site to control what gets studied and what stays buried. Drop "incompetence" if you think this is a billion-dollar bureaucratic disaster with no deeper motive. Subscribe to Hidden Latitude. I track the discoveries governments protect on paper and bury in practice. Hit the bell. That September capacity report is coming, and when it does, we will read every line, because I have a feeling the decision was made long before the ink was dry.